listen, we don't want that, but we also don't want the fossil, and we also don't want nuclear. So in the end, you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
But if you're not governing and you're in an opposition party, you don't have to take this decision, because you can say, I want this. Because that's the beauty of being in opposition. You can demand everything, because you don't have to bring it. You don't have to bring it to reality.
Welcome to a new interview here in the Energy Bridge. Today we have the pleasure to interview Stephan Renner, which is an example of a person who have bridged itself industry with policymaker with a technical background to like a policy architect, energy policy architect, we could say. So thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Stephan.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself to our community. We would like to know more about your journey and how you started.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my name is, as you said, Stephan Renner. I'm currently a policy advisor to the regional governor, vice governor of a region in Austria, Burgenland, the small 300,000 plus people region south of Vienna. I used to work until February. I used to work as an energy advisor to the Minister of Energy in Austria, Leonore Gewessler, which was on your event recently. And I was mainly responsible for heat law, for the European Energy Council, for energy security issues in the aftermath of the start of the war of aggression by Russia. Before that, I was in Brussels, working for an executive agency that distributes funding to renewable energy projects, energy efficiency projects, green financing projects. And before that, I used to work for the Austrian Energy Agency, which is a consultancy agency also with memberships from industry, from regions, from various stakeholders. I have a PhD in political science. And as you mentioned before, I have a technical background because I did a technical higher school. We have it in Austria. It's called HTL for those who speak German. And it's so basically I did an education in robotics and machinery. So basically I come from a technical perspective, then did social science, then administration, and then went into politics, if you want, as an advisor to a politician.
Yeah, and how was this change from technical perspective to policy? What drive you to go there?
Yeah, I know you two guys, you are engineers. For me, it was always clear, even when at the time when I did this engineering school, that I'm not, in my heart, I'm not an engineer. I think it's good to grasp to grasp the basic technical and physical realities, because you cannot change physics. That's one of the key laws. But I always knew that there is more to that, and so that's why I studied macroeconomics and also political science, to also find a bit out that you have the technical challenges, but you need to find a way to govern that and to regulate things. And for that, I think political science is interesting. Mm-hmm. It could have been law, it could have been macroeconomics. I decided to do political science. Because it's a combination of law, economics, social science, sociology, and political theory. Mm-hmm. And when you ask me on the perspective, I find it interesting that in the formative years of your life, you learn how to think, and you learn when you have a problem how to engage in this problem, how to solve it, and that's why. I guess you know that a technical perspective is different to a lawyer's perspective. It's different to a social science perspective. And so basically, when you have a different angle on a problem, you also find different solutions. And I think more solutions than when you only have a technical view, or only have a lawyer's view, or only have a social science view.
Exactly. That's what we are trying to bridge here, is to put all the perspective together to accelerate energy transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we also want to just understand a bit more about your journey. I mean, what kind of experiences that you had to go from being engineer to getting into the more political side of it. You said that people have different perspective, but if you can expand on what kind of different perspective that once you were an engineer and you got into the policy space that you found, their different perspective. How do they differ and why they need to come on the same page?
So in my life, it was a lot of coincidences. I mean, why I ended up as an advisor to politicians was a lot of coincidences, as always in life. There was not a master plan behind that. Maybe I could, like looking backwards, say there is a master plan, but there wasn't. But also when you work in a ministry and you are on a political level and you have to work with the civil servants that are experts in their field, lots of them are either lawyers or have a technical background or are experts, biologists, environmental studies. And so what they aim for is the ideal solution. So you have a problem, you try to solve it. And in engineering, you basically have like mechanical laws and physical laws and basic electrical laws, and you have to follow them. And once you follow that, and you can solve the solution, you can solve the problem. In political realities, you hardly find a situation where the ideal solution is the landing zone. The landing zone meaning this is the adoption of a law, for example. So you hardly have a situation where you have the ideal from a macroeconomic perspective, from a welfare state perspective, the best societal solution. That's hardly the case. Usually you land with the third, fourth, or fifth best solution. But this is because you have, in a complex reality like the electricity system, you have a lot of different stakeholders that have clear interests. Profit interests, other interests, different interests, and of course they pursue their interests. And politics is about balancing those interests. And in the end, you land the landing zone. You land at the solution that is from a welfare state. Maybe not always the best solution, but it's the solution you got. So basically, it's the best solution in a given environment, which is defined by political interests, by stakeholder interests, and so on. So basically, this is a different perspective. From a technical point of view, you have a clear route to a solution. From a political point of view, you have to integrate more into the equation, stakeholders, interests, and so on.
Okay, so it's like the intersection of interests for a common goal, kind of.
Whatever the common goal is. So when you are in a ministry and your minister has a clear political goal, for example, you want to have the Renewable Expansion Act, the EAG, and you want to have a clear regulatory framework to have investment certainty until 2030, so that we can expand renewable energy in Austria to have 100% renewables in 2030. So you have a clear goal, and this is the goal you want to achieve. But how you achieve the goal, of course, depends on the different interests, on negotiations, on balancing the different interests.
Yeah. And how do you think, how important you think it's the academia input or research input into the policy architecture?
Overall, I think, of course, it is important because the academia they provide the space of possibilities. If something is not known, it's not an option. So basically, you don't know the things that you don't know, and this is the role of academia for me to enlighten and to widen the space. So that you can find solutions that are not there yet, but you need them, and you need research to go one step further and to provide the possibilities for policymakers to actually do that. Basically, also an idea. First, you have an idea. If you don't have an idea, you cannot have a plan to get there, because first you need to know where you want to go. Yeah, exactly. And for this knowing to where you want to go, there is the academic world,
You need
there
input,
is
data.
exactly. Basically, for that, it's important to have. Once you know where you want to go, of course, it's important that you get support with facts. You need to have a fact-based. At least we always try to have a fact-based approach. So this is what science says. Like also for climate crisis, climate change. This is what science says. This is what we have to do. And then, of course, you have a lot of other interests that have their own studies, but for that you need academia. So in that sense, I think it's very important. Once it comes down to political negotiations, I think it's less relevant because then it's more about interests and negotiating and balancing the different interests.
Okay, it's an input. It's to enlighten the way
to broaden the space of possible solutions to a problem.
And all this experience, how did it shape your approach for policies for Austria, EAG, and other such policies? How did you integrate your knowledge coming from different backgrounds for having those policies?
To be honest, for me, it took quite a while to change my role, like coming from close to academia, like PhD academia, then energy agency, then in an administration, and then entering the political life where you have to think differently. You have to have a completely different approach, and the perspective from an administration is completely different than from a political point of view. So basically you have to change the perspective, the way you look into problems. Something that I mentioned before, you have to look at who are the main stakeholders, what are the main interests, and what do I need, what is the plan to achieve the political goal that I have. So it's about having a clear vision of what's the life or what's the world. But that is the role of the politician, like used to be my boss, like the minister. And they have the clear vision of where to want to go, and we are there to enable. From my role was to advise her to take well-informed decisions to get from A to B and to achieve this goal.
Yeah, and do you think it's possible to get 100% renewable 2030?
Yeah, I think we're on a good track. I think last time we checked, we were in a good path. We achieved the solar goals. Of course, also wind takes a bit longer. So the legal frameworks that we adopted are in place, but now they need to be built, of course. You also need to have the grid reinforced. That takes time. You need, as you know from your own experience, you need permitting procedure. You need the permitting procedures faster. So for that, we have the Renewable Energy Directive, which needs to be transposed into national law, which is now in the process. It could be faster. We had an acceleration law prepared, which was not adopted in the end for some whatever reasons. But all of that. Yes, I think we are in Austria on a good path.
How much are you in renewable?
At the moment,
yeah.
Well, I think in 2030 we achieve it. I don't know. I don't have the figure in my head. I'm very bad with numbers. That's maybe also a reason why in the end I didn't become an engineer.
But it's more than 50. I mean, a lot of hydro. It's a good mix in Austria.
No, we are like 90. I don't
90 already. Yeah.
It's embarrassing. Can you cut that out?
No, but it's good. And yeah, actually, in our energy forum 2 weeks ago, Nicola from Energy Vienna told to the audience that he just connected a wind power plant who took 13 years in permit, and they just could connect them. So yeah, permits, it's a thing.
Yeah, but then in politics. So when we were in office, we always heard from industry, from energy companies, we need to accelerate the permitting procedure. So for that, we were involved in the Renewable Energy Directive, RED 3, which had clear permitting acceleration parts in it. We also prepared a law that said that gave a maximum a maximum time for a certain procedure, PV, also heat pumps and so on. So Erneuerbaren Ausbaubeschleunigungsgesetz, it's called in German, it's a long word. But once you have concrete proposals to accelerate that, that different other interests kick in. For example, that you have regions that have the competence for the moment and they don't want to get rid of the competences. You have to know Austria is a federal state and the competences for energy is actually with the 9 regions and not with the federal level, which means that for every law that you want to adopt on the national level, you have to have a 2/3 majority because you have to overrule. Exactly. So basically, and in the last term in parliament, you had 3 parties at least, so us in government, and then 1 opposition party for every energy law. And now we have even more split. We have 3 in government, and you need to have a 4th party to pass energy laws. So basically, the good thing of that is once you adopt an energy law, it's always a broad consensus.
It's even more complex than Indian parliament.
I'm not so much involved in Indian parliament, but I can imagine. So at least you have a broad consensus, but to get there, of course, it's difficult because you have the 9 provinces who have interests, you have the opposition that has different interests than government. For that reason, when you talk about permitting, it has always been a claim, make it faster. So we delivered, and then they were like, whoa, but not that fast, and whoa, but we are in charge. This is the lender. It is our, and you should not at the federal level. You should not interfere with our. So that in the end, this acceleration law, renewable energy acceleration law, was not adopted because also within our coalition partner, which is also based within the 9 regions, there was a lot of resistance.
I just have a small curious question. Land is a federal subject here or a province? Like in India, especially if, for example, there is for any kind of land permit, there are lands which federal government can do anything with it, and then there are lands which state government needs to intervene. Especially for power, central government is open. They don't need to go to the state government to pass a law.
Yeah. Well, planning and whatever it's called in English, the Widmung, so that you basically dedicate area for a certain purpose, is very much part of the competences of the regions. And there you have some exceptions, which is high voltage lines, electricity, for example. And we wanted to expand this area of where no permitting is necessary at all, based on a federal law. So that's until a certain threshold for PV or a threshold for a heat pump, you don't need a permit at all in the Republic. And not only, and now because now you have building laws in 9 provinces, and the threshold for when you can build a PV on the roof is different in every of the 9 provinces.
Yeah, I would like to keep in your personal path and to know how was the change or your motivation to change from to work in Brussels with a European perspective to go to work now in Burgenland, like with local challenges. What motivates you and what are the biggest differences?
Well, the main driver for me, and I guess for you as well, is always a learning curve. Once you realize that you have seen it and you know how it works, it gets a bit boring. And then, of course, I worked in the administration for an executive agency, and we programmed new programs. We worked on finding the best projects, and then we prepared the contract of the projects. that's what it's called, project cycle. But after some years, it gets a bit boring, because it's always the same cycle. And then this option came up, and of course, if you ask if you want to work in a cabinet of a minister, at least for me as a political scientist, that's basically how better can it get. And that's why I decided to go and take this challenge and work for the minister. And that I'm now in the region is just a follow-up, if you want, because the government ended, and basically at the same time we won an election in this region and formed a government with them, and we can of course use experience that we gained on the federal level and also support them in the regional level. And so we built a new office in the regional government level, and I think we are already, after a couple of weeks, pretty established a good coalition level, because governing is also a craft, is something that you need to learn and need to experience. And it's like, I don't know, making a table or something, you have to know how to do it, and governing is basically the same. You need to have some experience, and then on the federal level or on the regional level, it doesn't make such a difference. But it's just a different perspective from an engineering perspective or from a academic perspective to a governing perspective.
And what are your goals for Burgenland?
Burgenland. Yes.
What are your plans for the region?
Well, at the moment we work on a climate protection law, on a climate law, which aims at being climate neutral in 2030. There is an intermediate step on 2030, like 2040, we want to be climate neutral. On 2030, we have an intermediate step where we want to have more renewable production as we consume energy total, so not only electricity. So basically, all the fossil fuel that we still need to use, because people are driving a car and still have heating at home that is powered by gas, is compensated basically by more renewable electricity. So we want to really become a climate neutral region, but there's still a lot of challenges. It's from that's like only one thing that we do, from climate adaptation, because we are affected by climate crisis already, which has impact on the agriculture a lot, on the water level that we have, like floods. So we feel it already, and we feel it mainly in agriculture and in water and everything. So basically, these are the challenges. And one thing that I know, once you are in government, many new challenges come, because some challenges you don't know at the beginning. I didn't expect a war of aggression in 2022, but that just came, or the virus that all affected us.
So maybe we could go back to the EAG, the Expansion, Renewable Energy Expansion Act. What could you say that are the learnings to apply it, and what could the CEE region learn about it? Like, what could be the learnings to be applied in the region?
What I said in the introduction is that for the environment, for the Renewable Energy Acceleration Act, EAG, it was more a colleague of mine that was involved in the nitty-gritty of the law. So I had other priorities. So basically I cannot give you all the details about how this law came into being. But I think what is important is that you set this clear path. Our vision was and still is that in 2030, we want to produce 100% of the electricity that we need. Of course, it's always a balancing perspective with renewable energy. And for that clear vision, you need to have the regulatory, the legal framework, because if you're a developer and you're a company and you want to invest, what you need to have is clarity.
Yeah, certainty.
Legal certainty. It doesn't matter what it is, and maybe it's not good for you, but at least the important thing is you have certainty. Everything else is, and that's what this law does. Until 2030, and all the installations that you build until then, for a long time, they have the certainty to have a certain revenue out of the renewable energy production. So basically, if you're below a revenue, it's compensated. If you're above, you don't get too much.
That has a name, like a bottom. We
contract of difference, basically. So you have one-way or two-way contract of differences. So basically, in the end, what this contract of difference does is when you produce, when you have when the electricity price is lower, a certain threshold, you get a bonus, you get some money, and if it's above a certain threshold, basically you have to pay something back.
Sounds fair.
Sounds fair, and that's the idea. Basically, what you have is you have always the certainty to have revenues out of the electricity you produce. Plus, and this is the two-way contract for difference, even if you have very high electricity prices, which in times can happen for
the ahead market is
for the reasons, the producers that actually benefit a lot from it have to pay something back. So I think it's from both sides. From the consumer perspective, it's fair, but also from the producer perspective, it's fair because it gives you a clear regulatory framework.
Yeah, with that you can go to banks and say we have assured this, so we can make a business plan and all the flow, and you can get funds. So accelerate the implementation.
That's what we're working on also in Burgenland at the moment with the regional utility, Burgenland Energy. It's called Project Tomorrow, and this is exactly what we do. We have a clear revenue stream for the installations. With that, we go to banks, European banks. It's the EIB is involved, and they give you some investment money. So it's capital they give you. And for them, it's the best investment because it's low risk, it's clear revenues. You have a utility that is very much well placed there, and for that you can leverage. Basically, you can leverage the own capital with bank capital and build the renewable energy.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to ask you something, that how did the policy become a standard that it can be replicated, that it becomes a successful policy and that it needs to be replicated by the other regions, by other countries? What do you see, what are the key ingredients of making a successful policy, or you think that you already know it, or after the success that you think?
No, I don't know it. Also from the European perspective, one of the important elements of a good project always was, is it replicable in other member states? And what I found is that it's really difficult. Because it's not a one size fits all, and what fits here is completely different in another context, because you have different stakeholders, different interests, different companies, different interest groups, different parties that work differently. So I think replication as such is important, and it's always important to look on the other side, on another country, in another region, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as we say. But just to replicate something and say, with factor A, B, and C, you can replicate it in all member states, I don't think that works.
You have to adapt it, kind of.
You have to adapt it. I think there's some overall, a consensus that for renewable energy, I think it's always good to have community involvement, for example, to have to be honest about the project, to talk with the people, to take them serious. I think this is for project developers. I think everywhere it's the same thing. But even here, the times are changing and the regions are different. Times are changing because now what you didn't have 10 years ago is that you have very well organized interest groups that are against it, that are anti-renewables, and renewables like wind has become a bit of a part of the cultural divide. And so you have a lot of interest groups that just provide fake news and have funding from sources that and so that's why it gets more complicated, and they basically destroy discourse. and that's a risk. Because also in Burgenland, in the region, what we have is a long established and a well-established relation with the civil society, with NGOs from what's called BirdLife or WWF, and they have been always involved for all the windmills. So basically, every wind engine in the region has been adopted or has been that we have the okay from the BirdLife.
Okay.
So we have like the nature conservation perspective included in this. So basically, what I wanted to say is to replicate things. There's no one plan where you can do it, but there's certain elements that you need to. I think you need to always consider.
Yeah, and well, you mentioned the importance of community approval to implement projects. How have you overcome this not in my backyard, let's say, obstacle from the communities?
I could say overall in Austria, if you look at the whole country, we probably haven't overcome because we still have some regions that don't have a single wind engine in their region.
Just because of the anti-groups?
Well, they have mountains. There are some interest groups that are kept fighting for protecting what they call protected landscape. So basically, so I'm not sure if we have adopted it. Maybe one thought, I think the fossil fuel industry and fossil fuel in itself is very good at being invisible. So what fossil fuel is really good at is hiding. Because you are somewhere in Russia, you put it in a pipeline, and then the first time you see it, it's in your heating system, and actually there you don't see it. You see it in your tank, but even there you don't see it really, but you move. So it's a brilliant idea, and it's brilliant because it's not visible. For renewable energy, if you look at solar or if you need wind, you see it, you see the landscape, and that creates some resistance in part of the society. So in some regions, they say we don't want to have wind engines because they don't fit into the landscape and they change the landscape, and that's why we are against it. Which is a concern, which need to be taken serious. But for that reason, but just to say, listen, we don't want that, but we also don't want the fossil, and we also don't want nuclear. So in the end, you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
But if you're not governing and you're in an opposition party, you don't have to take this decision because you can say, I want this. Because that's the beauty of being in opposition. You can demand everything because you don't have to bring it. You don't have to bring it to reality.
And now, principally, the government that you were supporting are in the opposition. Do you have some certain things that you want to put on the government that they should do now?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I'm talking here in my capacity as as advisor to the regional governor.
Or maybe you would like them to say, like the principal opposition, which is there to ask the government that they should stress upon something.
Sure. I mean, one thing is clear: we need to support. We continue to support renewable energy in Austria, and we have some new proposals, hopefully soon on the table, electricity law and also this the Beschleunigungs law, the acceleration law. And what I've seen so far is a step back. Basically, you have a peak shaving obligation for wind, for solar, which makes sense if it's done smart. But what I've seen now is not too smart.
Yeah.
But let's not go into nitty-gritty of Austrian politics because that's maybe not too interesting for your audience.
Yeah, and you mentioned nuclear. And lately it's a topic that it's again in the table with the international reports. How do you see the evolution of new nuclear power plants in the region?
One of my responsibilities in the ministry was the Energy Council. And in the Energy Council, you have all the member states pushing their interests. And we have seen that the nuclear lobby, and when you look at the member states, particularly France, but also other member states like Czech Republic, push for nuclear a lot. And they use the argument that it's low carbon and it's a solution to climate change to push for nuclear. Austria has always been very critical, and the Austrian position has been very critical. And also we created a lobbying group, if you want. We called it the Friends of Renewables, which was a like-minded group of member states that coordinated themselves for the Renewable Energy Directive to push back this claim that Renewable Energy Directive should be a low-carbon energy directive. That was one of the goals from France, and we were successful. So I think nuclear is a solution to climate change because it can replace fossil fuel. However, there's so many other questions that are unsolved in nuclear, which is proliferation, which is nuclear waste, which is the risk of terrorism, the nuclear risk in itself. So there's
political dependency also.
Exactly. So it doesn't make you independent. You have other sources. You need uranium. You have the uranium. So you have many unsolved problems. But you have a very strong and very powerful political lobby for nuclear, with France, of course, in the front of it. So our perspective always was, as Austria, we want renewable energy because it's cheaper, it's more cost effective, it's local, you can produce it, instead of nuclear. So, of course, in the European Union, it's the choice of every member state. It's their own decision to define their energy mix. But what we wanted to prevent is that at the European level, we give funding more funding into a technology that has been in the market for 70 years and apparently still needs subsidies in order to run because it's too expensive, it's too slow, and so for us it was not a solution. But of course, it's on the table, and many push for it.
One of the things the 2 weeks ago when we had the forum was about energy security in this region because of what happened politically with Russian gas, and you were instrumental as well in terms of what happened after the invasion of Ukraine. As a former senior project officer as well, this region of Central and Eastern Europe, they need more proposals, they need more projects. How can they get more funding from Europe, considering the low success rate for the projects?
Well, the easy solution on the short answer would be write better proposals. But the question, of course, what are better proposals? Well, I think it's a learning process. Every good proposal has a clear idea, clear deliverables. The project partners need to be the right partners, so they need to be based also in the group. It needs to clearly have also political backing if you work in a region, for example, of the local authorities. So everything together and drafted in a coherent way is a success for a good proposal. So, like when I was at the other job and was project advisor, for me, when I looked into the proposal, within 5 minutes, it was clear, is this a good proposal or not? Maybe it was then you have a prejudice, and but usually you see clearly at the beginning if they have a clear idea of what they want to do or not. Okay. And if they use words like, this is a tool for, a toolbox for, or this is a... So if they hide their actual idea behind words that don't mean much, then for me it was always clear that this is not a good project.
And if you have to tell maybe 3 elements for a successful project proposal, what would they be?
Well, as I said, a clear goal, which is a vision that takes the situation on the ground and makes it better. You have to have a clear vision. You have the right people in the project, which are partners. Well, those are two. Those are the main, and maybe the third would be the
political support, or
which I would consider as the right people. But political support is, of course, important. But also, I mean, this now a bit nitty-gritty, the clear calculation. So sometimes you have a project that makes sense, and then you have insane numbers or insane euros that you want to have for this project. So,
you mentioned
flashback to my past now.
Some flashback. You mentioned the situation between Russia and Ukraine, and how does affect it to the region because of the gas, energy independency, and you were in the government at that time. So how did you address this energy security issue, and what were the strategies? For example, we heard about this geothermal project in Vienna, but what were your vision to address this kind of crisis, right?
So jumping from the past to the recent past, when in 2022 Russian invaded Ukraine, we were in a situation where Austria was dependent to 90% on Russian gas.
Wow.
So we were highly dependent, had one company that imports gas, which is OMV, which has long-term contracts until 2040. They prolonged the contract in 2018 until 2040 for basically no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And so basically we were not in a very convenient situation. So in that situation, if Putin had decided to switch off gas supplies to Austria, we would have had to shut down industry, reduce electricity production. It would have been a huge recession with a lot of unemployed and with a lot of public funding to support those that are affected. So it would have been a major economic crisis in Austria.
Wow.
Yes, and so we were in this situation.
What do we do?
Well, besides some sleepless nights, where we realized that we are in a kind of difficult situation, we realized that we need to get as soon as possible out of this dependency. We need to diversify our gas supplies, which is, of course, not that easy if you are in a framework where you have European law, where you have Austrian law, where you have private actors, have contracts with other actors, where they signed the contract in the past. So how can you change what? And also in the contracts, they have already made sure that if a nation state just makes a decision and forbids, for example, that you import gas from Russia, that they get compensation. So basically, we had a private company, and we can now talk about this because OMV has ended this contract, so we had a situation where this one company was just got all the. So, but basically, next step was we were in a difficult situation. How do we get out? So we created a diversification law, which created incentives for basically covered the higher costs from gas coming through Germany, because you need to transport them through Germany. It's a bit more expensive. We created what's called a strategic gas reserve, which is basically what we have for oil within the framework of the International Energy Agency, that you have some basic reserve, 90 days of oil reserves. So we created something like this for gas. And then, of course, you have the short-term, medium-term, long-term perspective. And then, of course, you need to have all the solutions that we pursue anyways, which is renewable energy installations, electricity, getting rid of molecules and introducing more electrons in the system. And the geothermal energy is one of the solutions, because it's basically there. You could just harvest it. The only thing is that it takes 5 years.
Yeah, they are just drilling, right?
They have drilled already, but in 2022, when we're in a situation, we couldn't have said, "Don't be concerned, people. We have geothermal energy in Vienna," because
takes
No,
time.
it was not a solution, exactly. So this is the long-term perspective. For the short term, we had to have
Subsidies and kind of...
that, then also that you have the energy companies that had to store more gas. So basically there was an obligation within the law. So all different, and then we had the European level where we had emergency regulations. So it was a very busy time.
It's super challenging, yeah.
Now the industry, I'm doing a thesis in the university, and it's about industrial decarbonization. So I'm looking into the pathways. So one of it is electrification. The other is, of course, low carbon sources. So looking also into the bioenergy side of it. But how did the industries react? Are they more prepared now? And I think they have more coordination with the policymakers now because of crisis, and they should have the ears on the ground all the time to prepare for such things.
Yeah, as always, there is not one industry, but there are different companies, and depending on the company, they have different solutions. We have a large company like First. They need a lot of. It's a steel company in Upper Austria. And they realized quickly that they need to become independent. And what they did is that they changed their strategy to buy gas and bought it somewhere else. They didn't have the long-term contract, so they understand immediately. If you are, I don't know, if you have a restaurant and you get all the fruits from one company, and this company doesn't want to. I mean, not a sane entrepreneur would do that, to be so dependent on one. But we were. So it was an insane decision in 2018 by the former government to expand that industry. Some of the companies, they reacted immediately and they got it. And also what we saw since then, there's a major shift also in industrial heat from gas mainly to heat pumps, up to a certain degree. And also we introduced the transformation of industry subsidy scheme, which is a long-term subsidy scheme, because in industry you have to have long-term decisions. And the investment cycle is very long. That you have a clear subsidy schemes for this transformation and to subsidize, be it hydrogen, be it high temperature heat pumps, so that you have you can implement this decarbonization path for industry.
That's one of our next interviews. That is a surprise. We are not going to reveal the name, but it's a professional from Austrian Institute of Technology, AIT, and we are going to talk about high temperature heat pumps.
So very
that
good.
will be one of the next episodes. So seeing in the future, do you see that we could have another energy crisis soon, or how to be prepared for our next crisis?
Yeah, I think yes, there will be crisis, as has always been crisis, and there will be crisis. We had the energy crisis in the 1970s, the International Energy Agency, and the before mentioned storage obligations were a consequence. We had, in 2022, we had this gas crisis in Austria. And in the future, there will be crisis too. Of course, we have the risk of Taiwan, China. We're still in there. We saw yesterday, we have the Middle East, which is fragile, which is in a situation where you always have a potential crisis, and we see already that the oil prices go up. So the supply shocks, if you want, is always a risk. Having said that, and also you have a nuclear crisis, a potential, because also for nuclear, we saw that also in 2022, that the French nuclear fleet half of them were down for maintenance, for whatever. So they are very old and you need to rebuild them, but there's not enough capital and it's huge investments necessary. So also there you have a nuclear crisis. Having said that, I think that brings us back to our political goal, which is we need to have a decentralized renewable energy system with smart storage, a reinforced grid, and electricity production from wind, from solar, and geothermal as well. So taking everything we have, and we know that from science that we have enough energy from wind, from solar, so we can harvest the energy. We need to build this. So basically, we need to build this. And then, of course, all the questions come. Who finances it? Who pays for it? Why should we pay it now for the grid that is there for the next 30 years or 50 or 40 years? But a crisis, there will be another crisis. Of course, there will be crisis. There's always crisis. But the less you're dependent on external or on market speculation, the less you're affected by this.
And you touched upon storage. A lot of the manufacturing for the for battery storages are done elsewhere, and it's also again dependent on how the global situation plays out. Are there any plans from the Austrian government, or are there any policies in place to incentivize the manufacturing of storage system within Austria?
First, before that, what is the difference between the material need for storage and oil and gas, for example? Of both of them, you have to import. And yes, we import a lot of the lithium and the raw material you need for storage. We have some storage companies in Austria, but most of them come fully done from China, and you install them simply. That's what they do, and that's what we do. And of course, we have to be careful. And after 2022, also at the European level, we had some different acts that aimed to become more independent. If we have been successful so far, that can be debated. I think if it were the right instruments, that can be debated too. But the difference is still, once you have a battery here, you have the raw material here, and when you think in a circular economy point of view, that's something that's not just moving away. Lithium is always lithium from a chemical point of view. But if you import a fossil fuel like oil and gas, it's gone. It's in the atmosphere creating greenhouse gas emissions. So the approach to import steel, to import lithium, batteries, whatever, PV, it's a problem. Of course, if China is not delivering anymore, we are in another crisis. And yes, also there we have a crisis. But still, it's a difference. The difference is you have to think in a circular economy point of view, and not in a linear where you import it and then it goes up in smoke.
Yeah, no, that's we are also promoting circular economy approach, and renewable, it's an important part of it. Actually, there is a study in Chile that we made to size the amount of waste from after decommissioning all the power plants, what would happen with all this aluminum, glass. So it's interesting to see materials that are now here, what to do afterwards.
What is important here, of course, is that from the beginning, you need to have circular economy by design. Basically, also when you design goods, products, and that's also what we do at the European level, and we have to do it in Austrian level. It needs to be designed in a way that it's possible to have it in a circular. But because if you have a chemical product that it's so mixed with all different, and that you cannot recycle it anymore,
or it's too expensive too.
Or it's too expensive to have chemical recycling, then it doesn't make sense. So basically, from a design point of view, to the end of a lifetime of a product, the circular perspective needs to be integrated.
Now, from a personal level, thinking in the future, what would you like to be your legacy in energy sector?
My legacy? Well, as a member of a cabinet, you're always the invisible hand of the minister. So basically, I'd rather talk of the minister's perspective, because that's the important thing. So my personal, I was happy to be able to contribute a little bit to that. and that a little bit so that we had the crisis, and I think we did pretty well. We now have a diversification strategy of our gas supplies. I think we are on a path to reach this 100% renewables by 2030. We have an energy efficiency law. We are reducing electricity and energy consumption, basically. Overall, we've had a subsidy scheme that created an engine, a huge demand for new heating, for climate-friendly heating. So basically, this getting out of oil and gas in the heating system is it was just booming and skyrocketing. The current government now, because of some budgetary restraint, cut some of these subsidies, which is a shame, but that's for another discussion. So I think overall, and the most important thing is that the greenhouse gas emissions for the first time over years got back. So basically, we got back and we reduced the emissions, which gives us proof. Of course, there's always other factors. You have the climate and it's getting warmer, so basically you need less heating. You had the energy crisis with price spikes, and of course that reduces demand. You always have that. But even with these factors, and there is calculation from science, when you reduce these factors and you accept them, whatever the name is called for this kind of analysis, where you split the different factors, it shows that policies can work. So if you set the right incentives, if you set the right framework, you can reduce your emissions. And I think that's important. So we provided proof that it is important with the right framework to finally reduce emissions, which has been growing for years. And with the Greens in government, we were able to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, and it's a long-term game at the end. So the results will be seen years after years.
Many of the, so I'm convinced that many of the results of these policy decisions can be seen only in the years to come. You have been involved in wind projects development. It takes some years to develop a project. So basically you set the right incentive, you take the political decisions, you created a law. Once you have the law, you create this subsidy scheme. But only then these people develop the project, and so basically they build. Then you have the permitting, then you have to find the companies. So you need a time frame of 5 years, maybe longer. So many of the wind engines will be built in the years to come. So also lots of the results of the legacy, if you want, will be seen in the years to come, which of course the new government will be claiming that this is their success, obviously, as I would do it too. But that's what we will see. We will see lots of more renewable energy installations in Austria, resulting into this clear investment framework that we established.
Stephan, you have had an inspiring career, and most of our community is also young people who because energy transition is not just the transition from non-renewable sources to renewable sources, but also it's a job transition. A lot of young people are getting into the energy field. What advice you would give them, the young engineers, to get into policy? Why having this robust experiences are more important?
What advice would I give? I would say continue with your technical studies. I think it's important to understand how it works. I think that's the basic. Once you understand how it works, you can make it better. But as you are mostly studying engineering, I assume, at the Technical University, I would just encourage you to go on with your study, finish your study, be curious, and always find, once the learning curve gets flatter again, find new challenges. There can be politics. As I said before, for me it was a coincidence that I ended in the cabinet of a minister. It can be anything. But be it law or also technical studies, just continue and have a solid. I think it's very important to have a solid foundation of knowledge, and it's also the way you think. Basically, a university always also builds you as a person, and also you learn to think in a certain way as an engineer, and I think we need that. So I just encourage everyone, continue,
Okay.
continue your study, and if you then later on, if you're brave enough to enter into a political role, or
Brave enough. Okay.
or you're brave and create your own company, or you work in project development. I think we need, as we say, all hands on deck, and it's not a transition. I always refuse to say the word transition. It's not a transition. It's a change. We are changing. We are moving on. But similar to that, we moved on from coal to gas and to oil. We now move from molecules to electrons. So it's not so much a transition. It's just progress. It's just common sense, and it's the progress. But for this progress, we need new skills, and we need different skills than the drilling skills. Maybe we need for geothermal.
Yeah.
We also need some drilling skills, but you need still different skills. Yes.
So yeah, Stephan, it has been a pleasure to meet you. Also personally, to learn from you. Personally, I'm curious how you got into the minister advisement and all your career, because you said that it was like kind of destiny, maybe for other talk. But thank you very much.
Sure. Thank
being
you
here.
for having me, and good luck with your project, and good luck with your podcast, and good luck for your company and for the Energy Bridge.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
very much. And thank you for the community for watching
Thank you.
until the end, and stay tuned for our next episode. See you.
Ciao.